Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Oh my, people are this is probably going to be my biggest yet attended one. So in a minute, I will say hi to everybody. I will invite people to introduce themselves because this is very informal. This is office hours. I've not had these in a couple of years. Um, but meanwhile, I have people continuing to join. I wonder, anybody is more Zoom experience and know how I can just let everybody join without me having to admit every single person? Or is that not a thing?
That's not a thing, I think.
All right. Well, I mean, I do a lot of Zoom before Corona even, but it was always one-on-one. All right. I will. Hi, Karen. Oh, look at those views. Those are Zoom views or real views?
ukazaa ukapata mtoto kisha zikapotea zikakosa yeye anaaswa na mimi pia naaswa na ukaishi pamoja kabisa mtoto mpeleke mamangu basi
I should probably be able to mute everyone. There you go. All right, friends, again, as you are entering, I'm waiting for some more people and for trying to make sure I muted everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. All right, well, it's already a nice attendance. Just wondering, oh, here we go. Here's Jennifer joining us. Okay, so let's just start, and I will apologize as I will have to continuously go, at first make sure that I'm adding everybody that's participating. So I would really love for everybody to introduce themselves. I will start. You don't have to if you feel awkward about it, but it would be really nice if you could tell us a little bit about, yourself, just what kind of academic work you're doing. It's fine if you're not an academic writer. I know I have some of my creative, oh, there you go. I have one joining right now. I have a couple of people that do any, other types of writing. A lot of them are still nonfiction and can be what we call in the industry serious nonfiction. So it borders on the academic, and maybe some of you academic writers would want to hear about what it is like to actually write a book that is aimed at a wider audience. And serious nonfiction is a really great jumping board for academic writers when they're trying to write something more creative. All right, but I'll start by introducing myself. For those of you who don't know me, please mute yourself if you're just joining. Hi, Jennifer. All right, and in a minute, I would want us to go around and hear who is on the call. So my name is Dr. Sharon Shahaf. I am a global media scholar, an author, an editor, a coach. I hate the word coach. A writing whisperer. I specialize in helping people get unblocked when they face writer's block, and I've always been really drawn to working with students. I did a tenure track thing, and I trained PhD students and MA students and undergraduates, and I always gravitated towards courses where I could teach people how to write and do so without the attending suffering and emotional baggage that a lot of us, me included. This is not something I'm teaching because I have not gone up against the same obstacles in my own life. Very much, it's very much the opposite. I myself always loved to write. I always knew that I was a writer more than any other identity that I could describe. And yet I, often was very humbled by how difficult and challenging actual writing can be. And since I am an academic through and through, when things came to a very massive writer's block during my tenure track years, when I had a newborn and then you know, and then a 2-year-old and another newborn. So that was fun. I started really researching a lot more thoroughly the whole notion of writer's block. And I was pretty amazed to discover, and some of you actually, Jennifer, you were in my in one of my local workshops. So, you know, we discovered together the wealth of literature. And I'm like, you all are academics. There's a literature. I have all the books, right? So once you start venturing out from the halls of academia, you find out that there's actually a lot of really useful, practical, and yet theoretical and juicy knowledge from anywhere from psychology through, you know, theories of creativity and art, and just definitely a lot of more meditative kind of, you know, yoga teachers and meditation kind of new age world. There is a wealth of knowledge out there, and I made it my, you know, life task to read everything I could find and figure out how best to help myself and my students. And again, that's the time when I was building a writing curriculum for undergraduates. I'm a media scholar, a television scholar, and I was tasked with building the writing intensive introduction classes. And as many of you might be asked to teach things like that know, you know, this is a class that shouldn't have more than 15 kids, and I had the 25 kids, you know, in a writing intensive seminar. And that was a seminar nobody else in the faculty wanted to teach, and I loved designing it and teaching it, and it was intensive, but I really, that for me, also as I was leaving academia, that was kind of like, you know, the telltale sign of follow your passion. I said, if everybody else hated teaching that, and for me, that was my best experience, is getting these kids to learn that they have a voice and that they can use it, and that they can build a writing practice that would be supportive of their, you know, inner passion, and that they can align it, that they don't have to avoid it because it's so scary, that they avoid it until the last moment, and then, you know, they're up shit creek with no paddle, like we all do, right? We all are guilty of, you know, and it's not our fault. We have not been trained in academia. You know, if you have, please tell me, you know. Yeah, okay, Jennifer, you're there. I think you trained yourself though, weren't you? And also you were in a creative writing program?
Well, I started out, I was an English major as an undergraduate, and then I was a professional writer.
Right.
And then I went and did a literature degree, and then I started teaching writing, and now I'm in a PhD program for teaching writing.
That's fun. But I do remember that you told me that it was when you started really writing scholarship that you faced the first massive writer's block.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so writing is stressful, no matter whether it's corporate communications or it's you're writing, you know, your passion novel or whatever. It's and I think something that a lot of people don't recognize is that even for professional writers who, like, you know, are published and all that, it's always hard.
And I mean, well, I like gentle words. So instead of hard, I would like gentle, you know, like a gentle, challenging maybe.
Yes,
but
yeah, challenging.
However, I will tell you this, Jennifer, and we've had that conversation before. I now write a lot of different kinds of writing. I will say that academic writing is the hardest writing there is. And I have a whole, I mean, you've seen my spiel. I have a whole thing in my, I'll probably share later a little bit of my workshop, the crash workshop. I mean, I have a whole spiel about why that is, because, you know, it brings together many forms, many modes of writing, right? You do reporting, you know, and so a journalist, for example, that needs to report, they know how to do reporting, but we also do theory building. We do explaining, you know, data. We do, and I'm not even talking about all the stuff we need to do before we write, because other writers also need to do research, but we need to do original research, you know.
And the stakes are really high too. That's the other thing.
And the stakes are really high, and then, but when we are actually, I'm talking like narrow craft. You know, when you come to the craft of academic writing, you have to figure out how to still tell a story. So there's storytelling, you know, and argumentation. So very abstract kind of writing, but also you don't want to make it so boring that, you know, so, and most of us are perfectionists, and we'll talk about this a little bit later if you'd want, because it's an chicken and egg kind of thing. Are people drawn to academic work that are more perfectionist? Or I think a lot of the time what happens is that we are those who did well in school and were encouraged to do well at school. Like so many times I see with academic writers that we are from similar homes. So my middle class Israeli Jewish home is, I'm sure, a lot like, some other, my student Sue, who's Korean, and she was like, we were raised in the same home. So 0 to 99 was failure, and 99 to 100 was you can come home. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean. It's like, it's a false binary about success and failure, right? So 0 to 99, or maybe like 0 to 90, don't even talk to me. 90 to 95, how much did the other students get, right? And then, if you got 99, it's not that you're going to be celebrated. Obviously, you need to, you need to get that grade. And why didn't you get 100? So the best intentions in that situation create hopeless perfectionists. But I will also say this, I see it with my children. Some of us are just born with this perfectionism. And I do want to stop and say for a minute that perfectionism doesn't have to be a bad thing. One of the things when I started working with some of the tools that I will try to introduce today, I do a lot of mindfulness tools. And one of the tools that I really love, and you gotta be willing to kind of just go a little woo-woo and do things that may seem not rational and crazy. And Jennifer is already smiling because she knows the kind of stuff that I encourage. So one of the things that I would do was to create an internal conversation. So it could be, I could write a letter, I could use 2 pens, 2 different colors, and it could be between me and my book, or me and my stuckness, or, and one time I was writing a back and forth with me and my book, and I was really stuck on the book, and the book was telling me, it's that perfectionist. So basically my writer was writing a letter to my perfectionist, and the perfectionist was answering back, and we had a really interesting conversation, the 3 of us, the book, the writer, and perfectionist. And the perfectionist was like, you are not acknowledging my contribution. I'm the one making sure that you don't embarrass yourself, I'm the one. And writer was like, okay, you know what, great, thanks. Like the perfectionist in me needed to hear the writer saying, I really appreciate what you did, but I need you to now take a seat and, drink something and relax and let me and Sharon, that's me, right, finish. Because right now you've brought us here, but now you're just screaming in our ears that this is not enough and this is not enough, and you're not letting, and that was a breakthrough for me. I was like, okay. And I think, because I was so used to just saying, oh, I'm such a perfectionist and that's bad. And the perfectionist side in me had issues with that. So I know this may sound insane, but when you are willing to, or maybe not, but like when you're willing to actually start engaging what is really going on inside, you might find that these kind of moments give you the recharge. You're so burnt out, especially when you're in that moment in a project and you're so burnt out, and you can't even handle it, and you don't know what's going on, and there's so much noise. And sometimes these internal conversations this is again one of many tools, can really just make a difference. All right, so now we have a nice bunch of people in attendance, and not everybody's in fact most people are not showing us their faces, and that's okay, I guess, but I would very much like to hear from you who are in attendance. Just who you are, what kind of writing you do, what kind of scholar you are, and if you want to share, I always say in my group when I introduce new members, I'm like, share your writing dreams and your writing nightmares with us. So who wants to go first? Jennifer, you started a little bit, but you can tell us a little bit more. So you tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. My first career out of college was I was a game designer, actually, which actually involves a lot of writing, believe it or not. And then I went into corporate communications. I had a bad breakup, so I went to grad school to get over my bad breakup. And then I had and then I had an English degree, and someone said, "Do you want to teach?" And I said, I know how to write. I have no idea how to tell other people how to write. But then they said it's $3,000, and I said, okay, I'll figure it out. And so I did that for a while. I went back to graduate school, finished another degree, and then I ended up going back into corporate communications, and then back to teaching because 2008 happened and I lost my job. And then I finally got into being in a writing center, tutoring students on how to write. And then that was part-time. Full-time job came along, and I am now over tutoring, and I had enough money now, since I wasn't a starving adjunct, to go back and do the PhD. So
okay.
that's
in the throes of the PhD. You probably
right. I'm right now. I'm studying for comps, comprehensive exams, which is I have that in the fall, and we don't know what form that's going to take because of COVID, because our professors are now having to teach more classes, and so they have less time to grade our comps. So we don't know when they're going to be held. We don't know what form they're going to take. So that just really
the uncertainty, I'm sure, is going to be a reoccurring thing. I mean, and this week I've talked to so many people. It was so lovely. This, you know, I always say I don't love marketing. I'm good at marketing, but I don't love marketing. I don't love the selling part of marketing, but I do love the talking to people part of marketing, because it puts me in a service loop with my actual audience to see what they actually need. But yeah, back to you, Jennifer. That uncertainty, you know, I don't know if it's any consolation, but it's really why sure. I want to give you my go-to advice that I give students for comps. And it's going to be, you know, you guys are going to chuckle. The advice is don't read for comps, write for comps. Don't read for comps, write. And you know, people just get into like, I have to read and memorize every single word of every single, and this is not going to get you through. What gets you through is understanding that your field is asking you to show mastery in 3 or 4, however many, right, bodies of work. And it's around, I mean, I guess some programs are more open about this is for your lit review of your dissertation, and some programs are putting emphasis on, no, it needs to be where you become a specialist, but still it needs to be, at the end of the day, you sit and you write an exam. And when you sit and write something, you're making an argument about something. So if you go through each of your resources and you're thinking strategically, how do I convey in writing, you know, the main point, or, and again, especially if it's the kind of comp where you know you're basically writing your own lit review, it really helps to have it build towards your argument. But this is also it's not just for comps, right? It's, as academics, whenever we write any, you know, a monograph, an article, a book, so many people wrote when I asked what's your obstacle, I read too much. And, you know, I know that moment, but I have a couple of things to say about that. And I'm just using your point, Jennifer, just to jump in it. But there is and isn't such a thing as reading too much. It's, if you read too much in the right way, you read too much. Let me jump actually, because I want to show you, give you guys a bit of a taste of the kind of stuff we do in the actual workshops. So this is from the 6-week series. The last time I taught it in a local studio, right? So when you look at, I'm not sure. Okay, so this is this is when I'm looking at the stages of the creative process, because a lot of people get really stressed through a writing project, especially when it gets to be a big writing project, when they don't understand that the process has stages. And I mean, I always also emphasize that some of these are, I mean, there are universal stages, but there is also going to be your own personal process of how that looks for you. And so this is now covering, all right, here we go. We have, I take this from Lorraine Herring's book. I'm not gonna go into teaching mode, but she uses an agricultural metaphor for the stages, you know, planting, gathering, sorting, harvesting, and I kind of adapt it here, you know, so planting could be your field work, interviews, working on literature, you know, gathering can be kind of same, right? Or using same to start creating project files, notes, data, you know. Harvesting is when you actually are outlining, sorting is planning, outlining, brainstorming, and then harvesting is the actual writing drafts. But the main thing about that, or not the main thing, another big point about that is to remember I love the agricultural metaphor, because if you're going to go out to the field to plow when the field is muddy, you're not going to be able to successfully accomplish plowing the field. There is a right time and a right moment and a right season for things, right? And you can harvest before you planted the seeds. And so on and so on and so forth. And the point is that this is not a technicality, and this is not an excuse. This is something you need to understand and constantly, develop this kind of like reflective meta practice where like, what stage am I in? And sometimes you have to go back to stage one. Sometimes you've done all of the stages to conceptualize the big project, and you defended, for example, your dissertation, and now you're back to writing a chapter, and you have to do all of this all over again for your first chapter, et cetera, et cetera. So about reading too much, I love this incubation thing, because again, if you're gonna try to get in the egg when it's so early in the process, you're not gonna have a live thing. You have to wait for the right time for the thing to, right? And so I really highlight this notion of unseen growth. You can't really see it sometimes, and you have to be willing to wait. Let me see speaking of can't see it, let me see if people are trying to join. All right, no, great, all right. So then if you can see it and you have to wait it out, and then trust is key. You have to be able to trust that if you spend the time doing the reading, doing the sorting, saturating yourself with the research, then it's gonna come together, right? And when you research, the research you've done begins to overwhelm your left brain, right? Your strategic brain, and you can't remember it all. This is a really important time to trust, let go, and take a break. Do something that's like, like knitting or doodling or all these things, to let things incubate in the background. Things don't incubate in the conscious mind. You need to really understand that in order to accomplish any kind of a creative task, you have to be willing to accept that the conscious frontal cortex and the subconscious, parts of you are both tasked with different roles. And I think we just panic so much as academics. We are so goddamn rational all the time, right? And we are just so unable sometimes to relinquish control over any part of the process. All right, so I stopped sharing at this point. I wanted to hear from more people, but it looks like everybody's shy today. Anybody else wants to turn on their camera and say hi? Anybody? Yes? No? Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Sound check.
So, Garrett.
Yes, that's correct.
I can read English. All right. So, hi, Garrett. Tell us, where are you calling? Where are you joining us from?
Well done. My name is Garrett Castleberry, and I'm Associate Professor and Program Director of Communication, Media, and Ethics at Mid-America Christian University. It's a small private university in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area, and we service an undergraduate student body, and I oversee the COM program, but given its size, I also chair the Adult School of Arts and Sciences. And so I have to toggle between many administrative roles as well as the faculty roles. And, I think something that we all know gets lost in translation or maybe in application of those duties is that writer's voice. It can dissipate. It can go away a little bit. But I do try to stay active. I've always, tried to keep active as an academic writer. Coming from the communication discipline, I really do, and our program does cross over into media studies. So I write a lot about television, film, written about digital radio. It all interests me. These are all passion areas, but it doesn't mean the students are always as passionate about it. And so we have to not only be able to teach them scholarly writing in anticipation of preparing them for grad school, we also have to be able to teach. We're working on professional development, right?
Right. So, well, I mean, that's a really, I love the point that you're basically bringing up. It's going to be really widely applicable to anybody in academia and beyond, I think. But the whole multitasking notion, you know, again, before I talked about it, I don't know if you were on the call already, when I talked about the, you know, how academic writing is so hard because it's so many types and modes of writing, right, put into one, right? And that is also reflecting in the expectations that we have as professionals in academia. I mean, we're supposed to somehow teach ourselves how to teach. You know, nobody really, I mean, you can, you know, you get to see a professor teach, they show you how they build the syllabus, but really, honestly, we teach ourselves. So we need to teach ourselves how to be amazing teachers, right? Amazing teachers, because again, the bar is set at amazing. And we need to teach ourselves how, you know, when you started doing administrative work, no, you know, you didn't go to a chair school. You had to teach yourself that shit. Excuse me, I curse a lot because intelligent people do. I read in research. All right, so then you also need to teach yourself how to be a writer. And I think there is a loss of opportunity to name that you actually, that there is a skill that you can learn, a craft, a skill, you know. Honestly, I feel like maybe creative writing programs do it, but I feel like when it's in universities, even they don't do it. So there is a learned skill and there is a body of knowledge. People who write love to write about writing. And there are, I want to say I read all of them, but there's always more books about writing. And I'm writing a book about writing. So bringing together all this body of knowledge and through the experience of working with people, and as you were talking there about working with undergraduates, what I invite people to do when I work with them, and you know, and I am going to plug my class today, this is, you know, obviously, is to think what, you know, and I'm trying to use that language of an open, curious question, right? Not go like, why can't I write? But more like, what does it look like for me to develop a more mindful writing practice? And the emphasis on practice, because you come well, maybe not every day if you're chair and teaching, right? But you find a regular kind of habit that you can, you know, and when you start building a habit and you teach all the different parts of your psyche that it doesn't, you know, that it's not, that it's a normal, regular part of life, then you can begin to rewire your brain to accept that this is part of your job. And but what is missing is that moment where people can tell themselves, I need to work on learning how to be a writer. You know, nobody, you know, they really don't, they train us on a specific field of knowledge. And we're supposed to somehow, I mean, I was a professor, I tried really hard, really damn hard. And some of my graduate students, oh, I have a person waiting, sorry, might be joining us today. You know, I hope they can attest that I spent a lot of time doing that kind of work with graduate students, and I had professors who did it, but really we don't have a good curriculum in academia when we go to grad school in really instilling a no-nonsense, no drama writing curriculum to teach people how to develop a writing practice. And this is what my class is trying to do. So Garrett, back to you. What kind of, do you need to publish for your work? Are you working on publications? Are you prolific? Are you drowning, you know, in all of this? Because you have so much that you're doing.
All of the above, right? So I'm prolifically drowning in responsibilities, but also some opportunities. There was a lot of what do you call? There was a meme culture that was burning down 2019 as the year came to a close. Right? People were. It was
2020
maybe a bit of a dangerous omen. Everyone was bagging on 2019 so hard at the end of the year. 2020 kind of caught us by surprise. But it was my most successful year as an academic scholar, and sometimes it's coincidence, right? Because there was the thing, everything just happened to come out that, you know, that year,
right.
when
some of it the whole time, and then it all comes out at once, and all of a sudden now we celebrate.
A couple of things were written in 2019. Everything else was, you know, 2018, 17, 2011.
Right, right. And that's a really important point also. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to build a body of work. And yeah, it does feel sometimes like, you know, I'm a very visual person, you know, so I always think about is this the coyote that has to jump over the Grand Canyon and they keep going? Yeah, you have to keep going above the void, you know, you have to keep going. And that takes trust and that takes faith. And in that void, when you have to keep going and it's not looking good, but you know you're working, it's the job that we have to do is to sit in our self-worth, because we tend to believe the worst about ourselves as academic writers. And I'll definitely want to talk more about the environment, the hell on earth academia created for writers, because instead of being able to come and, you know, get support, you know, I'm obviously generalizing, but I do feel that in our professional arenas, especially, you know, you come to a conference, you're posturing, you're expected to come in and be like, I am a success. You know, I don't know a lot of people, maybe very established people that come in and say, I really, this paper, you know, I'm tearing my hair out. But when they do, it's usually a really good paper and people really engage, because as humans, we really connect to each other on vulnerability, not in this posturing, but we have this whole culture of you can't come in and share vulnerability. So, you know, my work with people, especially when I teach classes, I really emphasize creating a place where people can come and share vulnerability. So I really love that, you know, Gary, that you were like, all of the above. I'm successful, and sometimes I feel the opposite. So what are your goals for your writing now?
Well, let me kind of pose it as a way that leads into a question that has brought with me. A practical question is, I know what worked for me as a grad student, right? When I was a master's and a PhD student, it's such a joke now, right? We had so much more time then, but you put on this pressure as if you've got it so hard, and you could segment days. You know, you could sleep for a while and then stay up all night. I mean, and you could really tackle great writing projects in these burst kind of personal retreats, like, and you don't have to go anywhere, you know, at home retreats and what have you.
I don't know about you, but you know, a lot of people then have children also in between when they were in graduate school, and you know, so now you're tasked with children and all of these responsibilities.
And once you know, the more administrative, I'll use my context, the more administrative responsibilities you take on, the invisible labor that comes with it.
These are a lot of administration. It's like you're a chair.
Yes, you know, for every new duty you pick up, that could easily be another 3 committee meetings to attend on a monthly rotation or something like that. And so time continues to get very fragmented and segmented. And for me, I love the commentary you make about letting things incubate, and I'm a big incubator, and having a hot idea, trying to make sure I don't forget it, but then understanding that it's going to need to sit and process for a while until it's ready. But an issue I have sometimes is coming out of a kind of social climate of a meeting. And let's say you've got a 1-hour block before class or something like that, and it's just not enough time for me to go deep into writerly mode. And I don't know if there are tricks that others have had success with in terms of tapping into that writerly voice quicker. Should we just be patient? You know, it's harder to find those giant chunks of time anymore. But perhaps there are some.
I love this question. And I mean, I would definitely love to hear if anybody wants to jump in, but I will tell you what, you know, I have a whole, let me jump to that. Let me show you. I have a whole section of my class that talks about time, time management. But what I start with is this: if you all, you know, got yourself into a PhD program, if you all got yourself through coursework, you got yourself through comp, right? You got yourself a job. It is very unlikely that you do not already have amazing time management practices. So I think it's disempowering to come in and be like, let me tell you how to manage your time. So, but what, right? It it's true that you need to learn time management. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes you have the perfect time management and management skills, but it really, a situation comes where it's not adding up. And I call that stuck in transition.
Yeah.
Right? You need a transition in your practice. But what happens is you start being harsh towards yourself and saying, I somehow suck all of a sudden. I was like that. I got through a graduate program. I applied internationally. I was in Israel applying into the US. It's really hard. Got my visa, got my husband's visa, got fucking married. Sorry, guys. To come here so we were on the same visa. Wasn't going to do it. We're going to be not married forever. I had to do all that. Came here, got to my PhD, came out with a collection, da 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 da. Then I started the tenure track job with a newborn. Let me tell you, things were not adding up. So you're going to be in this transition, but instead of saying, okay, let me name that this is really right now, I cannot write at night because I'm nursing at night. And by the way, I had finished my dissertation with that newborn because the job was waiting. Crazy. So I did it somehow, but then there was PTSD from that experience. So what I'm trying to say is I wasted years thinking, instead of saying, okay, this is not adding up. It's not me. It's this, it's not adding up. I just drowned more and more because I was blaming myself instead of really I always say to my clients, stop, drop, and roll, which is what we tell children in the US when we train them to deal with fire, right? If you're on fire, don't sit there and be like, why do I burn so bad? I suck, Understand that you're on fire. And something I said, so first of all, I would say you're doing the first step, Gerd, by saying, this is not adding up, this is not working. Now, in terms of interventions to help deal with it, I think, naming that you need to create a shift in your practice could be really a big step here. And then what you can do, then we start investigating. Are you a morning writer? Are you a night writer? Really investigate the best times for you. And also remember when I talked about the stages, different stages demand different time spans, right? Maybe for a full draft of a chapter, you need those endless weekends, summers, but maybe and maybe that's just true for you and there's nothing to do. And then making yourself feel bad during a semester that you're not able to complete a full thing is a waste of time, right? It's a waste of perfectly good stress.
Yeah.
Why are you wasting your stress? And if you're like, okay, so I can understand that these are the stages, I can do interviews, I can do there are different, really breaking down all the different assignments and stages of the different projects you have. And, a very cold, calculated look that says, this is doable for me in between two meetings. And then I will also say, I am writing in the morning, Monday and Tuesday. And these are the mornings, you really shut down, and I know you probably heard that, but I mean, I can go forever. I can go on forever. The point is, this is going to be flexible. It is going to require you to continuously address it, right? And it's not going to get necessarily easier, but you got to be able to do trial and error. To say, well, what if I really give it 2 hours, I wake up at 5:30. Listen, I never wrote a word before midnight. Now I have kids. What to do? I have to get them to school now everything is, but in my real life, I have to get them I have to wake up at 6. I am now a person that wakes up at 5 to write. I hate it, but my brain works and I have to do, so then, after a while, I didn't hate it as much. So, really investigating, but also another thing I do in the class is I really teach many different, because different techniques for time management work for different people, but one that I really love to do is really simple. I can show you right now. I hand write a weekly schedule, seriously, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, okay, and I start, it's seriously, it's the most ridiculous thing, but it works. I start by blocking out all the activities. If I teach here, I teach here, and if these are meetings, whatever, right? I put in laundry, I put in grocery, I really put in everything I have for the week. And then after you block out, do you ever do that? You first block out the activities that are, after you block out the structure activities, you can really see, right? If you ever played, what do you call it? You know, those like when you need to find the other person's, I know, I don't know name of games in English. All right, we call them submarines, right? It's like you block it out. What do you call it? Submarines? No.
Battleship?
Battleship. We call it submarines in Hebrew, right? It's like playing Battleship. So you have now 2 hours in the afternoon on Monday. Now, what are you going to do? Watch Netflix or sit there? That's a technique that really, so I can't tell you, it always surprises me. It's such a basic, this is a cognitive therapy, kind of cognitive behavioral technique that I've learned from a really good cognitive behavioral therapist. And it's like the most basic. And the first time I taught this class, I mentioned it in passing and everybody was like, wait a minute, show us how to do it. And they started doing it every week in the class. And they became the masters of the weekly planning thing, because it's, so I do this Sunday night, right? Which is when my week begins. I always have like an hour after the kids go to sleep. I sit there, I do this. And then if I fucked up and I didn't show up for the times that then it's on me. You know what I mean? But the other thing with that is that I treat the writing time, well now, you know, well, I do teaching online, I do clients, but okay, so when I'm here with you, my kids are at home, my husband also works, they know they can interrupt, right? Same goes for when I'm writing. It's really important. And in your case, it's going to be people coming in with questions. And another thing is like, do you need to be in your office on campus? Or can you go to a coffee shop? You know, it's committing, it's planning, and it's then just being with it. And the other thing is like, you're gonna get bored, you're gonna get stuck, you're gonna sit there and not do the work, fine, but sit there. Teach your inner writer that he can trust you, right? To be there, and it will show up. So that's like, you know, on a very, like in a nutshell, the kind of approach I have. I'm like, let's work with what you really have. You know, what do you really concretely have in your life and what is available? And the other thing, I mean, but all of this also to say, if you are burnt out, you look very energetic to me, and somebody that's like, you know, not to discriminate against people without kids, but I think people with kids right now, you know what I mean? But if I were to work with you as a client or as a student, right, and I would very much, before I do that, find out, are you already here? You know, are you very burnt out? If you are exhausted, depleted, you know, I would first send you out on vacation. You know, it would be like, before we do any of this, you know, do you need to recharge? Do you take a week off where you schedule that time, but you sit there and read a novel or whatever, you know, not social media, but anything like play an instrument, you know, doodle. You can see my stupid doodlings up there on the wall. I have them on my wall, especially to show clients that you can be silly and do, you know, like stupid creative stuff. And this counts as work for me. I come to my workspace and I'm allowed like 30 minutes of whatever. And then I know, and this is how I tempt my writer. I'm like, come on, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna do creative stuff. And then we're gonna move on into whatever and so the other side of that, and you know, stop me if I'm like, but it's a lot of information that's relevant to what you asked, right? So another side of that is when you do your schedule, if at all possible, if you can break down to really concrete steps what you can do, but also don't commit in a way that's boring to you, like have some options, right? I can go into that article and put in the citations. I can go into the, you know, be very concrete, but also, right, depending on the stage. If you're at the stage when you're just brainstorming, so I want to show you the next slide after incubation. This, okay, the jigsaw puzzle. You know, are you in the stage where the puzzle is like on the floor and you're just staring at it and you need to begin to understand patterns? You know, did you already build your framework for the piece? You know, are you now filling out specific parts? You know, if you are here and you're trying to be here, right? If you're in where the puzzle is like on the floor and it's 1,000 pieces, you can't aspire to come into your workspace and do concrete assignments that belong to this stage, right? So, you know, the saturation part, again, I'm not going into this is from the whole presentation, but I wanted to share with you guys this so that you understand the main takeaway. If you take one takeaway from today is writing happens over time. It has stages. The stages are different for each individual, and they're different for each individual for each project, right? It's going to be different. And depending on the level also of your challenge, because if you've done 10 journal articles, right, then the 11th is probably not going to give you such a hard time. But if this is your first ever journal article or your first ever monograph or your first ever dissertation, people make your first ever dissertation your last. Don't be the person that has 2 dissertations. But anyways, it's going to be a different skill level that you have to acquire, and you have to be more patient with yourself as you build. Okay, so I went overboard answering you. That was a really good question, Garrett. Thank you for preparing that. So any comments from you?
Me or others?
Or others? Let's see, any others? Yeah.
I guess I can introduce myself.
Hi.
So my name is Miriam, and I'm a PhD candidate in marketing. I work around communications and media as well, so like a lot of people that we've heard so far. And I'm towards the end of what should be my PhD, so I want to finish and submit and defend. Hopefully, I was planning by spring, but losing childcare and any other alternatives, and this pandemic has created a lot of issues. And so now I'm hoping before the end of fall or winter 2021 to finish. Yeah, you don't touch.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding, because before I had kids, I used to work in pulses and have this, like, take this free time. Okay, I don't know what you're saying. Okay. But now I just don't have that, and whenever I do get work time, it's always interrupted, and so.
Right, so finding some resources to tap to get help, and boundaries, right, around your work sound like a top priority right off it's easier said than done. Believe me, I was there, been there and done that. But that's probably going to be a key issue, right? Because obviously, like you're showing us right now, together you cannot do the writing that you need to do, right?
No. Yeah. So ever since, I have 2 kids that I had during my PhD, and ever since having them, I have not found my mojo.
Right, and the thing is, when you have, and I saw again, I started a tenure track position with a newborn, and then had another 2 years later, and I so sympathize and empathize with what you have going. And the thing is, it keeps changing too, right? Because it's not like, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old is not like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, right? So it keeps changing. It requires moms to be parents, but who are we kidding? Mostly moms, to be superheroes. Well, honestly, my husband and I both had the same, we shared. So it's not fair to say moms, but I think also we can talk about that. There are some assumptions that institutions make about, you're not serious about, if a father sometimes asks for recommendations around parenting, it's like, wow, he's great. And if a mother is asking for the same, it's like, oh, well, we knew you're not going to be serious about that now that you fulfilled your biological, anyways. But that's a whole can of worms right there. But I will just say this, any kind of transition, having babies, but it can be, taking care of elderly parents, and dealing with medical, it really is endless. There are going to be moments in life where you are constrained, that, as I said before, things are not adding up. And the practices you have based on times when you had either like endless time, but even now with Corona, right? Like me, my kids are older at 9 and 11, and they were at school. Like I had 8 hours. It looks like paradise now, right? Thinking back, like I had 8 uninterrupted hours to to do my business, you know, to start, you know, I have 2 businesses, and now that I left academia behind, and, you know, hustle and also have time for my writing. And now it's like the universe said, oh, you figured that out? Let's try this, you know, let's try this with all the children and the husband and you all together in the family soup 24/7. My point with this is we have nothing to gain emotionally and for our well-being from being in denial about the transition when the transition happens. When it sucks and when you do not get this, you don't have that same time, energy, there's really very little to be gained from saying, why can't I do the same things I did before, right? Because you cannot, because you're human, because we're all human, you know? And so I think just getting rid of, we waste so much time just being harsh on ourselves, like somehow the more we are asked to do with less, we're supposed to be able to do that perfectly and without a problem. So that would be my first point. My first advice is to just name that this is really hard. And then, you know, ask for support and figure out a way to create some boundaries around, you know, it can be like, I really love the I Ching. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. This is the ancient Chinese book of changes. It's a very ancient text. I love it as like a really massive body of beautiful poetry with really good advice. And the I Ching says, like when you're in the hole, right? You're in the, I think it's like the well, you're stuck, you're in the well, you're in the hole. And the real peril is if you panic. You need to just not panic and not try to jump out. You need to like find a toehold at a time, okay? And I really love that image because it really just allows you to name and to just understand, well, right now it's hard, you know? There is no place for like fatal heroics and there's no place for panic. Panic is gonna get me to drown. Trying to jump out is gonna, you know, hurt me and mine. One little toe hold at a time. You just have to climb yourself out, and you gotta first forgive yourself for being human and struggling when it's hard, because if you're not getting enough sleep and if you're a mother of very, very young babies, you're not, then, you know, it's not you don't need a sleep scientist to know that that's gonna impact what you're able to do with creative work, and writing is creative work, right? So you know all that, but I do feel like a lot of us need for somebody to come in and say, listen, I see you, this fucking sucks and it's hard. You can do it, you can still do it, but not by pretending that you can, that all of the things that are happening are not happening. So then how to do it, yeah, very concrete, realistic understanding of what is available and what can be negotiated and who you could negotiate with, and really being willing to try, again, trial and error, try little different things. Can you start by 15 minutes a day? Can you find a 15 minutes? I gotta though emphasize, and this is for everybody, when I say 15 minutes or I say an hour or I say whatever time, I mean the door is locked, right? Again, like I told you, my kids know that they can come in here not right now if they're bleeding badly, not just any old, like a gusher. If we need to go to the ER, they're gonna come in, right? And it's the same when I write. And then the rest of the time, they know that I hang out with them and we do things together, right? But it wasn't even, it's easier to actually teach your kids than your husband when they're in a certain age, right? Than your partner for that matter. But the point being, you need to know that you deserve solitude. You deserve it. You deserve time alone to do your work. Writing is the kind of work that most people need solitude for. Most people need uninterrupted long stretches of time. You know, it's harder to get at certain circumstances for sure. But if everybody also is like, you know, a lot of people are like, everybody depends on me finishing. And Miriam, I'm like, just, you know, assuming, right? You know, if you know, there's like, no, I'm disappointing everybody or whatever, right? Everybody's waiting. You know, meanwhile, you're trying to do this with 2 babies. So, you know, what to do? You know, there is just the reality of the situation. So sitting in your self-worth and saying, I rock. I'm still in it despite such obstacles. I'm still in it. I'm in it to win it. It's going to take a minute. And now I'm doing poetry. I don't know what's going on. All right, so, but you know, really just not using this as a moment to start being hard on yourself and saying, I suck, but saying, you know, trying to kind of shift the perspective into saying, I struggle. And a really good trick with that, and again, I don't know, most of you are not on video, so I don't know if people are like, she's crazy, but I'm just gonna go all out, I don't care, is to find that inner child in you and parent her. What I mean by that, Miriam, is, for example, if your child in a couple of years, right, because they're young, but like if they came home with homework and they would say, I don't understand, I don't know how to do this, I don't understand, or, you know, they're sitting down to do it and they're like all over the place, would you turn around and be like, you're a lazy piece of shit, you know, you're worthless? Never, right? See? But do you do it to yourself? Aha. So, if you would never tell a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, even a 12-year-old, why aren't you doing your homework? You're so lazy. You would be like, no, baby, you know, you're really tired. Why don't we give you a snack and redirect the child gently and give them what they need and take care of their energy needs, take care of their love needs? Well, same goes for, we need to, the part of us that write is a very young, the creative part, right, is the inner child. And we scared that child, you know, we really terrified that poor child many times. And because you're insulting your inner 7-year-old Miriam, she doesn't want to come and play with you. You know, when it's time for your writer to come and do, she's like, you know, that woman is insulting me. You know, I try to do my best and she tells me I'm lazy. I try to do my best and she just tells me, you know, da 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 da. So this is a lot of the work that needs to happen. And again, especially with people in academia, for some reason there's, I don't know the correlation, the egg and the chicken, but we tend to just expect of ourselves this perfection without any regard to our own well-being, our own humanity, you know, and what we would give anybody, a stranger in the street, we would be compassionate to. But we struggle giving ourselves compassion. All right, I'll stop. Miriam, comments, thoughts? Am I resonating with you?
Yeah, I just have to try to put some stuff in practice and be kinder to myself. I know I have to be, but it's just with this particular period, just feel like I'm falling further behind because all of these other people that don't have children are finding lots of time because they can't go out of the house and can't do anything else, right? So
right, I know. I have noticed that chasm right between people who are like, this is an opportunity for me to, but I mean, I will say that a lot of people thought that early on, and now the isolation is also, you know, tripping them up. So it's not. Let me tell you this: everybody that always thought that they are not writing because they don't have endless time, the worst thing you can do to a person like that is give them endless time, okay? Because that's not the reason why people get stuck in their writing, you know. It's just not. Endless time is often the quickest route to a major, massive writer's block. And because the reasons for writer block, and you know, I can share with you quickly, early on in my workshop, the first, there's a lot, some of the first things I do, hang on, no, that's, I'll stop sharing. This is the wrong PowerPoint because there you go, this is the one. All right, am I sharing it? Do you see an unforgiving writing?
No, not yet.
All right, here we are. So the academic environment of all environments for writing is really an unforgiving environment, right? So beyond, you know, whatever you brought from home, and I'm not gonna get into it too much because I do wanna talk about the specific structure of the class and answer questions if people have about the technicalities of the class. But so we spent a long time with this one. You know, I can talk about creative monsters, advisor, professors, peers, deans, colleagues, reviewers. There are power dynamics and abuse that happen. They're just rampant in academia. But the notion of creative, I'll stop for a minute to share just the notion of creative monsters is a very big deal in the creative writing world. You know, if you know Julia Cameron's book, I have it somewhere here. Here it is, The Artist's Way. She has a lot of you know, it's a really fantastic, it's kind of like a 12-step program where you go through. This actually has 3 of her books. It's not that enormous, but I also love her book, The Right to Write. I will write it in the comments. Julia Cameron, The Right to Write, which is more specifically for writers. And I actually assign a few snippets of it in every class I teach, including our class if you join. And, you know, from undergraduate writing seminar to, she's just wonderful. And she talks about creative monsters. And again, quickly, the theory here is that we bring some emotional baggage into our writing that's very old, that happened to us as children. You know, the first elementary school teacher that kind of didn't like you, that shut down your creativity, or, you know, a TA in a creative writing course that didn't like your poem, or, you know, a parent, a sibling, many times a sibling, you know, somebody that made fun of your creative efforts, or, you know, creative. And my definition of creative is very expensive. I feel writing scholarship is a very creative pursuit. Okay, so that falls for me under creative. So that wound that happened, and sometimes happen in a very young age, can get you to, you know, can shut you up. Like for me, I remember writing a poem at around age 7. Like I just learned how to write, and I was singing in a family picnic, and I was, you know, really enjoying writing my poem. And my, you know, they're not really monsters, but what happened was my parents were showing off. They were like, look at her writing. And they took pictures of me writing. And then they made me read the poem. And my perfectionism, I was like, this poem is shit. I felt like immediately already as the imposter syndrome, right? Was already born. I was, you know, I just learned how to write. I wrote my first poem, and my parents were showing off, and I didn't feel like I deserved that the poem wasn't good enough for me to show, you know. And that was the last poem I had written until I was 40. Okay, so yeah, you know, that's the kind of things that I actually invite you. And you might say, listen, lady, I'm trying to finish a dissertation. You are inviting me to start digging in my childhood wounds. And I say yes, because whether you dig there or not, that shit is in between you and the screen. You know that moment when you come to the screen and it's like a reverse magnetic field just that pushes you away and you cannot even bring yourself to start. It's all of that baggage, you know, so creative monsters. Now, the thing is, we go into an academic environment and this gets triggered, you know, so you go into a graduate class and it becomes super competitive, and there's absolutely no reason for it to be competitive. You know, I remember when I was doing my grad work, we were, you know, the incoming class, somebody was doing Bollywood, you know, somebody was doing French cinema, I was doing Israeli television, you know, somebody was doing Egypt, different methodologies, and still we went into a mindset of we are competing against each other. Why? You know, really no reason, except for something in the setup was we were bringing our wounds and we were projecting also onto the professors, right? So, and then I saw it as a professor myself, as much as I didn't want to be that my students would project onto me that I'm the mother figure and they're competing for my love. You know, and then I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I told my students, like, I see the dynamic of, you know, the sibling rivalry between my kids, and I see how it's projected onto me in the classroom, and this becomes a really big distortion of the creative process that you really are here to do. So that kind of stuff, when we start getting stuck, when we start feeling destabilized in our self-worth and our lovability and our authenticity and all of these things that you need to have kind of aligned in order for you to make progress in a creative pursuit, these things are worth revisiting. Now, I don't want to go too much into it, but I talked about this in the video that I did a couple of days ago, the punishment reward incentivization that our environment is rife with. So I don't know, tell me people if you feel like I'm repeating myself and you heard that, but like just quickly to explain what this means is we are in an environment that incentivizes us, right? If you do well, you finish the degree and you get a job, or you know, if you don't do well, you get punishment, you know, this punishment reward thing. Now, research time and again shows that for creative tasks, that kind of incentivization backfires. People don't do better on a creative assignment. So for example, if you take a group and you tell them, well, your assignment is to stuff envelopes, and you're going to get more money if you stuff more envelopes. Great. Mechanical work, yes. That kind of incentivization really works. But if you give groups something very creative to do, and you tell them you're going to get more money if you do it, or if you do it faster, whatever, or whoever wins, you know, it's everybody does less, you know, not as well, right? So there was a really good, I'm a television scholar, so I love reality shows. There was this reality show on Netflix, and they recreated that experiment. They took these two groups and they did the envelope thing. And yes, everybody, you know, and then the other thing that they did, two groups, 50 people, and they divided them into groups of 3 or 4, and they gave them a very creative assignment. And that assignment was like marshmallow and sticks, and they had to build like the tallest building. And one group, they told them they're competing in between them, right? There were groups of 4, and they said, you know, you're gonna get the biggest prize if, you know, the tallest the building is. And in the other group, they said, you know, guys, just knock yourself out, have fun, you know. So you can already imagine, you don't need to be that scientist to understand the atmosphere in the room when they were competing. People fell apart. They were fighting over who's going to lead and dominate. And even the tallest structure they built wasn't as tall as the lowest structure the other group built. In the other group, everybody was attentive, collaborative, creative. They had fun. They enjoyed themselves. And everything they built was really beautiful and innovative, and everybody did really well. So why am I telling you all of this? When we go into academia, and it gets worse, the worse. I mean, I was in a state university where you would be punished if you didn't publish enough, and the punishment was you would get more classes to teach, which in itself is a problem premise, because why is teaching a punishment if we are, you know, we're supposed to be passionate about our teaching? Well, we know why, right? But anyways, that whole mindset that they're trying to incentivize you by, and you try to do that to yourself by giving yourself rewards and by giving yourself punishments, it backfires for a creative pursuit. And then you start really struggling and get really stuck. All right, so anybody else wants to say hi to the group and me and ask a question or tell us where you're from or what's going on?
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the experience and your journey in the scholarship world. My name is David Biwot from Kenya.
Hi, David. Can you show us your? Can you show us the video, or is that not an option? I would really love to see your face. You're trying. I think he's trying. Maybe it's not working because of the internet connection. Let me see. Can I start your video? No. All right. Sorry. David? Uh-oh. All right. Well, let's wait for David to come back on. Anyone else wants to say hi in the meanwhile? I mean, you know me, I can talk forever. All right. Karen, do you want to say hi to the group maybe? No?
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute. I'm trying to see how I can turn on the video here.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that. Oh, hi.
Hi. Hi.
Nice to see you again. Obviously, we have met.
Yes. Hi, so I'm Karen Lee, and I finished my PhD at the end of 2018, and then I had a job, a teaching job in Dubai for a year, and but this year I'm moving to a different university here in Dubai. So since about 2017, I've been teaching adjunct, writing my dissertation, and then I had my first full-time job as an academic scholar here in Dubai, teaching 4 courses. The teaching load here in general is quite heavy because most universities, well, large majority of the universities here are mostly teaching universities rather than research-based institutions. Yeah, so I guess, and I also have 2 kids. So I had my first child, so my PhD was a long process. It took me about 9 years to finish because I got married and then I had my first child and then I had my second one. And then, yeah.
What happened when you were still getting your PhD?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
hard.
I had to,
it's hard, friend.
Yeah. I also had to take about 3 years off because I went back to Korea and then I got married and then I had my first child. We tried to get my husband to pursue a graduate degree in the same school. That never happened. So it took me a while to come back. So I feel like the whole journey has been like really just makeshift, just, like get that like that impulsive, like just give it all you have and then do your dissertation, give it all you got and do your comps. Like it wasn't actually like a learning process. It wasn't a steady, you know what I mean? And I feel
it's like you're saying at every point you had to reach a point of depletion.
Exactly.
And you can't learn when it's like a game of survival.
Exactly.
When you're in a survival mode, it's fight or flight.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And it's chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. I have been in survival mode for the past decade or so. And but in the end, I did manage. So I just want to kind of, give a word of encouragement for, I know, the female scholars, academics out there, because I mean, it will happen in the end. But the thing is, I feel like it comes at like so much cost in terms of like how you feel about yourself, because you constantly feel exhausted, and then you also end up with these kind of like physical like illness. You end up with migraines, like, and then it keeps coming back once in a while. So it's hard. But I think and I was also wondering what other people kind of what your concerns were in terms of writing. So I was just curious to come and listen in. But I think my biggest issue is that now, so I have a full-time job, and I mean, I'm hoping to eventually move to an institution that offers like tenure track. I mean, I'm not saying that it's the best place to be, but
if you're in that game, you might as well.
For some kind of chance of stability, I guess.
Security.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But, I mean, so I feel like the next 3 years is crucial for me to get as much publication out there, and to really just kind of prove myself as a potential, like a promising scholar, so that I can eventually, you know what I mean? And it's just
right. And you know what I'm going to stop you and catch you doing, right? Because we've talked earlier on.
Yeah. And then, but you were talking about that incentive thing for creative endeavors, and you're right. I don't think it's helping me at all.
Hang on, sorry, because it's cutting off, so I keep talking over you, and that's not my intention. But I just want to say the word for everybody that wasn't privy, because we had a long conversation today. Prove myself. That is such a trap, because when you come, and it connects to the incentivization thing, right? But the notion that we constantly have to, from scratch, prove ourselves to the world, to an advisor, to our parents, to whatever, this can be such a tricky, poisonous little ditty there, because you're setting yourself up to prove, if you're like, I'll prove or not prove, right? Now, what is the alternative, you might ask me, right? Because we're so trained. Of course I have to prove myself, right? Well, the alternative is knowing that whether you do this or not, by merits of existing, and every human is a once-in-a-lifetime cosmic event, you are already worthy. You just are. Okay, so if we come out with the assumption that we are worthy, and we have a unique contribution to make, and we have a voice, and we start from that place rather than that whole burden of proving, you know, the burden of proving takes you outside of your wholeness and your body, right? Your mind-body connection, and out into like an outside of you, very toxic place. Okay, so I take proving out of the table, and I know it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard to do, and it's extremely hard to do in academia. But I will tell you this from researching writers that are very prolific. A lot of them really just naturally are not concerned with the proving. It's really interesting to see, and you know, there is a gender thing there. I mean, I will say a lot of them are men, but not only. I know women, and I know women who have kids, and I truly, I don't know why they have it naturally, but I do know to tell you that you can develop that. It doesn't have to be a natural thing, so you can develop. But there are some people who are naturally like, prove, I don't know, you know. And, you know, we might say, oh, they're shallow because they're not trying to prove themselves. But in fact, these are the most prolific people sometimes. And you know what? Also, there are people who are very prolific, and then they have 5 articles, and, you know, 4 of them are okay, and 1 is fantastic, and they continue on and on. And so the notion, and hi, David, we will get back to you in a second. I'm sorry, I feel like I made your thing collapse. But your asking you to come on the camera probably was too much for the internet. But anyways, I'll finish the point I was making. I was talking about the problem of trying to prove yourself. In academia, we're constantly motivated by, I will, like, you know, Karen just said, I need to get a job, so I need to prove myself. In order to prove myself, I have to publish, and to publish in high-hitting journals, probably I'm completing what Karen, or I have to publish a monograph, and it has to be in the best press, etc., etc. I'm not saying all of these things are not true, but do they belong in between you and the work process when you are writing something which is a creative process? It's like poisoning the well, okay? There is a well inside each of and again, I'm doing a little bit of the itching thing, but it's true, you know, it's a metaphor, but it's true. There's a fountain, there's a well, there is a unique contribution. You are not here by mistake. You already proved yourself time and time and time again by the time you're in a PhD program, okay? You know, if we can release the burden and you can just function from a place of trust that you are already worthy and you don't have to constantly prove, and if you can release that, even as like a cognitive psychological exercise, right, to try to release it. And what comes instead of it is, we call it in the coaching world, sitting in your own self-worth. It's the hardest goddamn thing to do, because people also come at your self-worth, right? People do that, and that's when I said before, the harsh environment within academia, reviewers. I mean, you write a thing, you send it for review, or you write in a review for somebody else, you feel that you're asked to tear the paper apart in order to see, you know, I got so many horrible reviews in my, right? And even as an editor that edited a special issue, you know, sometimes it was just like, why? I mean, I love the piece. I've worked with a writer to bring it to this beautiful, there's a unique contribution there, and you send it out to reviewers, and it's unpaid labor, and they're la 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 and all of that. But sometimes they're just so mean, mean, right? Yeah. I had somebody say, an article I spent 4 years writing, it's a beautiful article, it's one of my favorites, and they said, well, her English made me anal. And I'm like, you were probably anal already
to begin with, right?
My English at this point in time, and try writing your scholarship in Hebrew, you know, bitch. So sorry, but why, right? This mean, and so if you're already struggling to sit in your self-worth, right? And you're not saying, you know, okay, I am doing this and I'm in a different country, in a different language, whatever it is that you have going, right? And, or I have a newborn, or all of that thing. And instead of that, you're susceptible, because you're in the proving game. Then you're susceptible to the criticism coming from outside and validating that you are all of these horrible things you tell yourself. So then it creates, right, the block, because why would you want to come into your work area and start working if you're just going to hear vitriol and horrible things about yourself? And it's coming from you. You're the mean one too. Then you internalize it, right? And remember what I said before to Miriam, like, would you tell your child, oh, you're a lazy piece of shit, aren't you? Oh, here you go. You're now writing again. I mean, you know, instead of saying, I'm exhausted, I am doing this, I have a newborn, I didn't sleep in a week, I have banana and hands all over me, you know, I really should congratulate myself for even showing up. All right, so Karen, is any of this resonating with, can you imagine taking on a different mindset?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it all sounds like, you know, also like it sounds really great. I guess, you know, it's kind of like difficult. It's difficult to really take out what you've internalized. I mean, I think it even takes a long time to really, you know,
it took a long time
be conscious.
It took a long time to build, right? So it will take a long time to break apart.
Exactly.
Then you better start.
Yeah.
TikTok. You know what I mean? It's yes. So these are lifelong, these are things that well-meaning, even, you know, our parents with the best intention help us build, you know, this old school, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, you know, we can always achieve by just being like, kumbaya, my Lord. I get it, okay? But trust yourself that you have made it so far. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And what is the point? At some point, when you've proved, you still are like running after it, and there's never a moment in time of satisfaction, of sitting in your self-worth, right? And what if you kind of flip the pyramid, right? First, you know, my advisor used to say, a very smart man, Shanti Kumar, and he said, calm down first, and then think. Don't try to think when you're agitated and panicked. This is how you make mistakes, right? And some people here know Shanti. Shanti Kumar is a very enlightened human being and happens to also be in academia, right? So yeah, you calm down first. So how about you sit in your self-worth first, right? And then you create, you know, you build a writing practice, a creative practice that comes from a place of, I don't necessarily need to prove, I need to share the contribution I have. I've made it this far. Instead of thinking about proving, thinking about sharing. So Karen, I want to move to so David, you go by David or David?
Sorry, my laptop went off. My name is David Biwot from Kenya, and I am so happy for you, Sharon. You've shared a lot of stories about academia, and it really inspires us, especially we are young and upcoming scholars from Kenya and
Thank you. Tell
Africa.
Tell me more about your scholarship. So what, where are you, what stage are you, what university, what's going on?
Yes, I'm pursuing Masters in Communication Studies at United States International University, Africa. It's here in Kenya. And I have already finished classwork. So I'm looking forward to defend my thesis proposal maybe next week or the other week.
Fantastic. And I'm so glad, you know, I do global work, and I always did so much to try to find voices from Africa. I got to tell you, so there is a thirst out there for your voices, for, you know, again, especially, you know, I'm Israeli, still in the like Anglo-American media world. They're like on television, and they tell you a story of like just America, and then sometimes they will say, and also something happened in Britain, and you're like, there's a world out there. So I really am delighted to see voices emerging, you know, from all over the world. So I'm so super rooting for you. So with this defense, then you have to defend. Are you defending the dissertation project?
Yes, I'm defending the dissertation project. Once I'm done, then I'll continue with the journey. The way you've been talking about scholarship world, it really inspires us because we want to pursue PhD in communication studies. And when we see you're talking about the same experiences, it really inspires us. So thank you so much for the experience.
Absolutely. This is wonderful. And by the way, I wanted to tell everybody on this call, and this is nice because we have 6 participants. And Karen, I talked to you already. I am willing to open this class on a donation base, meaning whatever you can pay. So if you want, and I'll talk a little bit about the class and what I'm doing, but you know, I'm trying. I have this coaching business, and I really love working with academic writers. I have another coaching business, and it's, you know, it's all taken off. I left academia, and then that's a whole story for another day, because I was denied tenure, and I'm an internationally recognized scholar, and so that toxic stuff can happen to you in academia, and I was blatantly discriminated against because I became a parent. So that's a fun story for another day. And then, you know, I was denied, and then, you know, I had the chance, other places pursued me to come work, and I got to kind of decide for myself, you know what, I really am enjoying to do this work. I feel like my mission is to help people unlock their passion and align with it. So this is really, I really appreciate it. Your kind word, David, too. So this is a service thing for me too. I need to cover my costs, but it's a service thing for me too. So especially if you're, you know, precariously or underemployed, you know, if you have money from university for the professional development, yes, I would really appreciate if you can pay. But if you're in the, you know, struggling, we don't say third world anymore, but emerging world, right? Or you are, if you need this, I don't want to turn anybody away because of funds. So I am offering to the people in this call that bother to take the time to come up on the call to participate in a donation base, meaning you can pay any, you know, from 0 to the 400 that I priced it in. So this is a one-time, you know, offer for everybody on this call. So, but you gotta hurry up and make the decision because the class starts Thursday, and I would love to show you the syllabus as well. So David, do you have any specific question or concern you wanted to ask?
First of all, I would like to thank my friend Robert. I'm seeing he's texting there that I say hi to you. He's the one who told me there was a discussion going on, and
hi Robert. Yeah, I want to hear from Robert too in a minute.
Yes, maybe Robert can share some few things about our journey in academia here in Kenya.
Yeah, Robert.
Hello hi. Everyone. Hello.
We can hear you.
So my name is Robert, as David has said. Robert, we are master students from United States International University, Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya. I follow page on Facebook, the ICA Communication Division Forum. That's why I got the link and I forwarded to my friend David. Yeah.
Nice.
So we are passionate about the scholarship world. That's why we kind of follow these forums. So we have pursued communication studies. We want to go to the next level. Okay, I have defended my final thesis, so I'm just a little step ahead of David. I was looking at health communication, and especially in Africa, you know, we have vernacular languages, and they are also important when you want to communicate to diverse populations in Africa. So I was looking at vernacular mass media and cancer control in a Kenyan perspective. And I was inspired to take, when interacting with the community, I was so inspired to take, I saw there are so many research gaps, even in this, you said we are no longer third world, we are very emerging economies, and we still have very big gaps which research can come in. Right. And you know, if you want to solve a problem for the society, you first maybe research about it, so you find the niche in which you approach the problem. And so that's why we are so inspired by this forum. Thank you so much, Sharon, for your insights.
Thank you.
You are an acclaimed scholar.
Thank you.
When I shared the,
and let me ask you this,
link,
oh, go ahead.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, so you guys are looking at pursuing your PhDs. Are you interested in coming to the United States, or, well, now, who knows with the world right now, right? But, or are you hoping to do your PhDs in the same place where you're already getting your MAs?
Yes, we are looking forward to pursue a PhD.
Who knows with the world right now, this COVID-19?
Yeah, COVID-19 is messing everything up, huh?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But you're open. So the other question is like, if you are trying to to do the work to come to the US or Europe to pursue a PhD, and that's something you're interested in potentially pursuing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
I do recommend, well, the world is changing and things are a bit messed. I don't know to recommend the US anymore, really, honestly, because maybe after the election, if they can sort themselves out. I mean, now I'm a citizen, but I came here as an international student. I started my PhD in 2004 in the University of Texas. And Karen too, right? Karen, did you come from Korea, or were you born in the States? I'm not sure, because Karen has such a good accent, so I'm not, you can assume. But I do know that we had, my group was very diverse. We had a guy from Cameroon, Olivier, and we had, Chen Hua from China, and Assam from Lebanon, and Tariq, who was American, Egypt, and me from Israel, and we were like the little UN. It's really nice to have this global group come together around the same interest in scholarship. So I very much recommend that, and to the extent that I can help, I'm happy to also help with that. So let me show you a little bit about the class. If anybody else, by the way, has a question, we're losing, I know it's getting late, so we're also losing people. So I did want to show, let me share the screen and show the syllabus for the class if there's interest. And really, at this point, we have a really nice, solid group. So, no strings attached. And as I said, I am willing to take on people on a donation base, meaning, you pay what you are able to pay for the class. And so this class is all going to be online. We can talk about it, to register if but I just want to show you what's included. You have 6 live classes that are not pre-recorded. A lot of the coaching classes in academic, like the professor has a class called Unstuck, and I'm sure it's a great class, but it's all pre-recorded. When you sign up for the class and you pay around the same, if not more, than what I'm charging, you just get a pre-recorded bunch of videos, and that's just not the same as the classes will be run like this is ran. So, it creates more of a community. Each class will be between 1.5 and 2 hours with a break, sometimes 3 hours. There's PowerPoint presentations, you kind of saw it, and there will be a Facebook group or a Google Classroom. I'm thinking about these two, where you would have access to the PowerPoints, and then after the class recorded, it will be uploaded there, and it will be for, available there. All right, I'm not going to go into all like that. You're going to get homework. That is a lot of options and exercises and little things to practice the things that we're looking in class. The class syllabus, and obviously a class is interactive, you can ask questions. But I do want to show you the weeks. So, the first week talks about, now you are getting a sense of my approach, but it talks about that writing as, hang on, I think somebody's trying to join. No, okay. So writing is process, as opposed to writing as we're trying to make a product. Understand that you need to develop a writing practice and a process. And so each week you also will be getting readings. All of these readings will be available in PDF form. I would already pre-made them. And then we have dealing with, I call them the ugly triplets: avoidance, resistance, and blocks. They usually come together, all kind of psychological, cognitive, emotional issues that are going to come up. And we started looking at this a lot today when we talk. So understanding writing block and learning practices and steps to mitigate and intervene and stop and kind of shift the momentum from getting stuck to getting unstuck. Then we have a week that's all about time. So back to Garrett's question, I think, right? We're talking about how you organize your time, and you understand how to approach scheduling your writing, how to effectively schedule daily, monthly, yearly, and pair project. Learn to honestly accommodate and balance life circumstances. So the mothers, not only, but I mean, I just think it does get very hard when you are a mother or a parent. identify the stages. That kind, I talked about that. So moving on, hacking the research paper. So the second half of the class really gets into the research craft. And we hack the formula of how do you approach writing research, understanding the fundamental nature of the academic style, how you create a topic and you ask a question about that topic. And then what do you do to answer the question you asked about your topic? That's the basic formula. And it can really help you to, you know, when you get confused about what is method and what is this. But if you understand that your topic is actually already an original contribution, you know, your topic is not, oh, global media. It's a more narrow, but, you know, an original contribution that you put together, right? Global media, when I'm sitting in Kenya and I'm looking at my community dealing with this, right? What is the question that I then want to ask about media globalization, right? So from, you know, that's one example, right? Or, you know, women in reality television. This is a good example that I always give undergraduate, and a lot of you are communication students, right? So it's, or scholars. So I would explain to my students, okay, but then you watch the show, you really actually want to just write about Atlanta housewives or something, right? Watch the show and come up with a topic that is deeper than just, oh, women on television or Black women on television. What are you asking, right? Are you asking about, you know, a specific stereotype, right? So then you start narrowing it down. The angry Black woman, or power and stereotype in anger represented in reality television in the United States, you know, right? So you start building and locating your topic. Locating your topic is a stage of writing scholarship. It's not a given. It's part of what you incubate in the incubation system. So we spend a lot of time really getting into the weeds of what it means to start the work provisionally, allowing it to kind of not be a thing yet in the world, allowing it to be a question, allowing yourself to discover what it is, locating your topic, then developing questions about that topic. The question then can become your subheading for sections and for chapters, especially in bigger books, right? You can see that you have like a big topic and a big question, and then it falls down into smaller questions, and those are leading the chapters. But you don't have these things before you actually did the work. Those are rhetorical tools, and that's called craft and style, the academic style, right? Now I'm giving you guys all the goodies, right? So this is the work. When we start really talking about the craft of academic writing, is to understand the different components of a research piece and how they come together, but also how do we learn to become more patient once we understand what's involved and why it's complicated. We can become more patient about what it takes to get us from that first initial, oh, I want to write about this, to a finished product, and all the levels of refining it in between. All right, so then this is a very important week, and you know, this is gonna go from this week forward. We're gonna continue to talk about this throughout the class, and this is when you guys start talking about your own scholarship, and you can, you know, take it to apply it to your own stuff. All right, what else? So hack your outline. So we start really talking about the very concrete things that you need to do, how you get from an idea to a finished product through very concrete stages. All right, week 5, craft, practice style and structure, understanding the importance of practice in your craft, learn to work with and analyze models, right? So when you start working on a paper, find a paper that somebody else wrote, not to copy the paper idea, but to understand the paper structure and then implement the same structure if it's the appropriate structure for your scholarship. That is part of the work. You know, why we read literature is also to understand the conventions of the field, of how we go through asking and then proving and then all of that stuff, right? So all of that stuff about thinking and structuring a project as sequence of writerly modes, right? Storytelling, analysis, theory building, reporting. This can all sound overwhelming, but when we take it step by step, right? And then this structuring your manuscript using time. Well, this is I can get to this and talk about this an hour, so I'm not gonna do it. But you know, when you see a movie, right? Sometimes you start in the first scene and then you do a flashback. Okay, this is what brought our hero, right, to this moment. these kind of things also work in academia, especially when we talk about dissertation or books, but also in an article. Sometimes you want to start in a moment that kind of epitomize the problem you're talking about, right? I am in the street in Israel and I am watching this situation, and or what, you know, right? I see people engaging with an American media text, but they're not doing it the same way that in America they do it. They're doing something else. And here's my question, right? La, 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 right? So sometimes there is benefit from thinking about these models that are from filmmaking and storytelling and understanding how we can bring them into our craft as academic writers. All right, and then week 6, I call it finishing school. I love that week. It's the week that really talks to you about how to finish things. You know, how to start and to also finish, right? How do you get to a final product? And again, I'm kind of running out of time, so I don't want to get into that too much. So basically, what you can see with this syllabus is that what we end up doing is we go from like the more emotional, psychological stuff that is very important because it can release you from a lot of stuff that stands in between you and your productivity. And the productivity is when you can align with your sense of self-worth and passion and, you know, all of that, and bring that when you are not trying to prove to somebody else, but you're trying to have a voice in the world, right? And then we go from those things, and then we go into the practical part of like, okay, how do you organize your time? How do you organize your project? And then you go into the craft of the actual writing. How do I construct a piece of academic writing within the convention of my field? And then, you know, and then how do we start and finish? All right, so any questions about any of this? No? All right, so if there aren't any, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that the program looks like it could be a very interesting program, especially.
Hang on, you got cut off. You said especially, the problem especially.
Academic.
You got cut off, sorry.
Okay, so for us who are starting real academic writing, we don't have any papers yet. So, and we would want to actually get there to get published and stuff. So I think we would want to take this discussion further. I think all the messages have shared my email address. David can also share his so that we can take this discussion further. Yeah, it's a very good program. I am interested personally. Yeah.
Listen, and I did this because I wanted to see, you know, who's out there and what's going on. And again, you're invited. I think if you're an MA student going on your PhD, this could be good for a good preparation, but I am not, you know, the class already made, you know, so don't feel pressure. But even I think if you take from this, when you know, having looked at the syllabus and seeing what that approach to writing is, I think that benefits you already, I hope. All right, so with that, I see that we're also we're overstaying our welcome. So it's a good time for me to say goodbye. I really appreciate, now that we have David and Robert, I really appreciate, I can't tell you how much I am happy to see you guys joining from, you know, Kenya, right? Both of you are from Kenya, right?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I'm telling you, I mean, you can ask, I have one of my colleagues and friends, Nikusai. I'm probably not saying it right. I think it's like Nikusai Nadala. And he actually is in Norway.
Yes.
You know his work? I made him write about, you know, the African Idol. He wrote for my book about television formats. And, you know, he told me later, now everybody's asking me, write about Big Brother, write about this, because it was so hard to find, except for maybe people from South Africa. And I was like, no, I want, you know, people from all over Africa to share with us, because we can't get a global media theory by writing just about what is going on in the United States. It's ridiculous, you know? And I did my PhD here in the US, and they're just so US-centric. And as I said before, they will be like, this is media, and they're talking about American television, which is so specific. Who has commercial television, right? Like first, they always were commercial. So, as a television scholar, I'm like, no, it wasn't like this in the rest of the world. You guys are like generalizing from a very privileged position. So I very much encourage you guys to keep on going, because the world needs to hear your voices. And I'm very happy that you guys are pursuing communication studies specifically. And, it sounds like Robert, you said you were doing health communication. David, what are you doing? Also health communication?
I'm doing the same thing, health communication, as Robert. And as he said, we are so much interested in writing papers, especially we have a gap in terms of coming up with papers. From undergrad, we didn't know that if you want to pursue this line of specialization to PhD, you need to publish papers. And I want to say that the program you have is so nice. We wish we will still discuss about that. And I know if we get in touch with you, we will be able to reach where we want to, like,
I definitely would love to find a way to help you, the two of you, more than anybody really else, because again, as I said, this is a passion and a community service thing for me more than anything. I have this coaching business, it's this, I go back to do the academic, like at first when I left academia, I was like, leave me alone. It was horrible. I was discriminated against, and I had a bad experience after many years of building a very international, it was ridiculous. I mean, the US is very, you see now, it's racist and it's sexist and it's horrible. I mean, it's shameful too. It's just, embarrassed. Now I'm a citizen, I'm a citizen of Israel. So now I'm embarrassed of my two countries. I have two countries that are, can be great in some ways and then do shameful, horrible things, but hopefully maybe the world, like now with everything that is going on, I know you're probably following the protest after the George Floyd murder, and maybe, just maybe, if we can get rid of the orange buffoon, I cannot even tell you the embarrassment. It's just, and now in the United States is the epicenter of COVID-19, and they're not doing, it's, anyways, politics, but it's really a rough moment, and I just really want to encourage you guys to stick with it despite the difficulties, because the world, we need you. We need young people to stand in their self-worth and to stand in their resilience and to not be afraid to, do it through vulnerability, not just it's really hurting more people when we don't acknowledge that something is hard. It's not worth doing it if it's not hard. Yeah. So I really encourage you to stay with it. If I can help, I'm happy to help. If you want to, join the class, I'm happy to have you join the class. I'm happy to have you join the class for free. Specifically, I honestly was not going to override it, but specifically the two of you, yes. And just be in touch and let me know what you think. All right. And the publication, by the way, we don't expect in the US, we don't expect people to begin publishing before they're in the PhD program itself. Yeah. Like you're early for that. It's fine. You can, we're not supposed to start publishing in journals until a little later. So you're not too late at all for that part. When you're pursuing your PhDs, when you're starting to really do your own original research, out of that original research, that's the dissertation, we can expect maybe 1 or 2 journal articles to come. And then as you continue and you graduate and you have the dissertation and maybe 1 or 2 publications, then you maybe make it into a book and you do more research. So the expectation to publish already before you started your PhD, it sounds to me, over the top. So just, do the good work, study your studies, and remember that your voice is important. Whether it's in academia or somewhere else, we need you, okay? The world needs you. We need your contribution and your voice. All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. And I appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for the insights. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great, for me, it's an afternoon. I don't know what time is it in Kenya.
It's 10.
Okay, 10 at night. So have a great night.
Yes.
All right.
We'll keep in touch.
Keep in touch. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.